Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Matt Chat brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Excited today to be joined by the two NCAA champs, a while back and most recent Coach Nickerson and number in the 141-pound national champion, Andrew Alirez. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Yep, thank you for having us.
No, for sure. So, Coach, I'll start with you. I think probably like the first real conversation we had was a couple years ago about Vinny, and then we actually sat in person and talked a little bit after the Michigan border brawl last year ran into you. And it's always interesting to visit with guys that won so much, their nature, like, guys know how to win and they're intense at the right time, but you seem like a person that's, the switch. Like you're not 24/7 psycho Little League coach, which, one of my friends, a bunch of my guys are coaching Little League this week and they're talking about fights in the stands and stuff like that. I don't see you as being that kind of guy. So let's just start with what is your approach, I guess your mental approach to wrestling? Because I know the season's such a grind and then off season and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to have that fire, right? I mean, you've got to have that fire and that passion to be able to really just energize these student athletes, right? And get them in the right frame of mind. But it's also knowing how they respond, right? And knowing what's best for them. And, I always have the conversation with each one of my athletes, how do you want us to coach you, right? Because I can be either, right? I can be the guy that sits in the corner and smiles and claps his hands and says, hey, keep it up, good work. Or I can be the guy that yells for 7 minutes, right? And, I think that's important. And I think that's one of the things that we do really well at Northern Colorado is we really adapt to our athletes, right? Versus just forcing them to adapt to us. I mean, I think anymore these kids are very talented coming in. And our job is mainly to manage them, right? And I think when we're able to do that, we're going to get the most out of them. But, again, talking about 365 days a year, we need those breaks too, right? And we got to be able to turn it on, turn it off. My wife and I just took a little mini vacation this past weekend. We needed that time. She needed that time. I mean, we've got one rule in my household, and it's when I get home at night, we don't talk wrestling, right? And I need that more than she does. I mean, she gets a little upset because she has to hear from Twitter or whatnot, what's going on with our program, but it's finding that balance in life that can keep us grounded and, develop our relationship based on more than just wrestling.
Yeah. The interesting thing you talk about balance. So Andrew, I do the commentary for the Big 12. So, got to watch you wrestle up close last couple of years. I actually coached Josh Saunders 1 year against you.
Oh, that's awesome.
In Raleigh, and you won that match 10-0. So, saw up close and personal how good you are. But, and I mean this as a compliment, you're like a lot of guys, a very high ceiling coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody continues to grow, continues to improve. Some guys don't skip a beat and they're winning national titles as freshmen. Some guys never pan out. And then there's guys a million different levels of in between. I know you talked about last year how that disappointment was motivating. And, we have a lot of guys that are coming off high school state tournaments, Little League state tournaments, national tournaments and the vast majority of people watching this probably didn't get a gold medal the last month, right? I mean, just the law of averages. So maybe help me and whoever's watching understand, what did you specifically do to make that end of last season such a positive for you this year?
Yeah, you just kind of gotta self-reflect and be real with yourself. I've always believed in my talent, and I've believed in my skills and everything that I could do, like the gifts I've been blessed with. So I knew it wasn't a lack of talent or a lack of anything like that. It was all the little things. So I really sat back and I said, hey, if my goal is to be a national champion, I got to make these necessary adjustments and be able to do that for a long period of time. Rather that's with my diet, with my schooling, with cleaning, like whatever it takes, just living perfect or as near to perfect as you could get, because we're human, we're all going to make mistakes. But yeah, I made a list of almost sacrifices, and I said, hey, I'm not going to do this for the next 8 to 9 months. I'm going to stay locked in, and this is how I'm going to live my life. And it was as simple as I went out and did it. I knew the adjustments. Like it's not hard. It's not really rocket science, but it's hard to do. It's hard to keep yourself disciplined enough to continue to stay on that path for a long period of time. And I was able to do that, and the results went and showed.
So I'd kind of like to ask you guys both a question off of that. So first of all, did you have specific things? Like, I think when we were in the tunnel, I talked to you, even like you're talking about like making your bed every day. And I remember when I was a pain in the rear end growing up, I was like a good kid, didn't get in trouble, but like I would never make my bed because my mom, I was like, well, I'm just going to get back in it. And then I wouldn't put dishes away. Then I bought a house, had a roommate, and I called my mother and apologized profusely. It turns out your parents are usually right about things like that. But I've always thought when you make sacrifices, like there comes a point when it's a 1-1 match and people don't quit. They don't break. They just stop going quite as hard because they kind of feel like maybe they haven't paid the price.
Yeah.
Or conversely, like this year, like I paid the price. I'm willing to die, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We heard that from Keegan a year ago, and I heard that from you in the tunnel. And the other thing I heard a lot from people is people finding their why, which felt to me like a big theme of the tournament this year in the back. And getting to be in the back is it's a great honor. It's different energy back there. You guys know it, both as athletes and national champions, and one as a national championship coach. But when you wrote specific things down, was it like making your bed, maybe not eating ice cream? Was it things like that?
Yeah, in a sense. So it was, cleaning, like doing basically in a nutshell, it's doing all the things that I don't want to do. So if I don't want to do something, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to throw an attitude or a fit about it. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to get it done. It could be my school. I said I'm going to one thing, like maybe I'm not like crazy prodigy school person, but like I said, I'm going to go to class every day. And then I'm going to do every assignment on time. And then I'm not going to cheat on my diet one time. I'm going to stay locked into my diet. After I compete, I'm going to continue to stay locked in. I'm not going to go blow up really big. I'm going to stay locked in with my diet. I'm going to try to come in every single day at the same weight. I followed just my daily routine every day, what I eat in the morning, what I eat for dinner, drinking my water, like down to the littlest thing, getting an extra workout in or in practice, like just going hard through the things that maybe it's easy to kind of just coast through it, like just continually pushing to try to be perfect in all aspects of life. I was doing little things as like when it was nicer out, I was biking everywhere, because I was like, maybe this is going to give me this much better cardio, or just continuing that mindset of like, if I do a small thing right now, and it's going to continue to add up, and it's going to get me to where I want to go.
Yeah. So Coach, all the stuff that Andrew said sounds a lot like the speech my dad and I would give on the first day of practice every year, right? Like, hey, you got to go to class every day. If you don't know the teacher's name, you're in trouble. If you don't know your grade, it's probably not an A or a B. If you're not turning in assignments, you're going to, you can't. I always tell people, like, life is all about partial work. Like if a kid's got an 89, the teacher can decide to give you an A or a B. And a lot of it just based on how you acted. Like, did you ask questions? So obviously you preach this every year. What did you guys do to help Andrew maybe, I don't know how to say, just maybe take it a little more seriously?
I think it's a little bit, it's one of those things we preach all the time, right? And I think it's a little bit one of those things where, he just 100% bought in, right? I heard Andrew say it on a, interview recently that he did, you know, it's like, you know, pretty much everything that I've told him has kind of come true, right? You know, a little bit, you know, and even going into the national tournament last year, you know, it was his third year in college, but he had never been in that national tournament, right? He had COVID. Then he got injured the next year. And, you know, we talked about how different that national tournament is. And, you know, I told him, I said, hey, you know, you can go win a national title. Like, you're good enough. You could do it. Right. But I could also see in the blood round. Right. And it took him, you know, really having that disappointment, that type of defeat a little bit to say, you know what, like, we're just going to do it. Right. And, you know, I've been asked a lot, what did I do differently to coach him? I mean, nothing really. Right. I mean, he just made a choice. Right. And we talk a lot about those sacrifices. They're not really sacrifices. They're choices you make in life that are going to take you over that hump. And, you know, when things get tough, that discipline is going to pay off. Right. And I mean, that's really all that happened. And we saw that very early in the summer last year that Andrew had made those changes in his life. And, you know, even like, what was it, first, second competition of the year, he goes out and wrestles in the All-Star Classic, beats the number one guy in the country. You know, that was not a difficult decision to make, to whether he was going to wrestle or not, because he was in national championship shape and he was ready to wrestle at that moment. Right. And I think throughout the season, it was more of a worry of, hey, can we keep him at this level all season long? Right. Because it's hard to be peaked for 5 months, but it's that discipline that took over, and he was perfect all year.
So, Andrew, when you had your choice pretty much, I'm guessing, of any school in America coming out, and the schools you didn't have a choice from, those coaches should be fired for not recruiting you. So, you know, I think Coach Nickerson would agree with that. But, you know, you stay close to home, and home's good, but you obviously have to believe the program's good enough, right? Like, if you're like, these guys stink, I'm never going to be an All-American or national champion, then you're going to have to make that decision to leave, I would guess. I would think winning is more important than, you know, seeing your folks on a regular basis. So now that you've done this, I mean, you're the face of the program. And, you know, I coached junior college for a lot of years, and sometimes we had some guys who were really good, but less than ideally mature. And I told them, like, when you're a winner, you're a leader, whether you want to be or not. You know, like, people are going to look up to you. I'm sure most of the guys on the team already looked up to you, but even more now. I mean, you got the chip, right? When you go get the chip, it's probably one of the reasons you look up to coach. He got a chip. You got a chip wrestling with one arm. You know, so, you know, how much of it did you embrace that pressure and look at it like, no, I'd rather be the first guy here versus like the 80th guy over here? Because I think I'll tell this story real quick and I'll get out of the way. When Ben Askren was getting recruited, there was a school that told him, don't go to Missouri. You'll never win there. They've never won there. And that was the worst thing they could have told him. He said, that's why I'm going there. You know, where somebody had said, look, you're probably going to be good at both places. We just think we can help you get better faster. Anyways, so go on with you. I don't want to interrupt, but what was your thought process on being the face of the program, the leader, and, you know, running the table the whole year, the pressure it builds up? I mean, I remember it was like in high school. I can only imagine what it's like in college.
Yeah, you know, it was kind of that same exact thing for me. I'd been around the program here for a long time already. I mean, I started in 8th grade, so I had all that time training at the program, seeing guys come in, come out, just seeing the quality of wrestlers that are starting to come here. So I knew I could do it here. And then, and it was a little bit of that. Like, I didn't want to go to a program and just be another name on the wall. I feel like it would have been more special to come here and kind of be a first, you know, get a program rolling. And that's what I've wanted to do and want to continue to do. And I kind of did that in my high school, you know, I was the first 4-timer. So just, I've kind of always had that on me. The city and everybody supporting me and kind of knowing or believing that I'm going to go on to do great things. So I've kind of dealt with that for a long time already. So it wasn't nothing that is foreign to me. I was ready for it, and I embrace it in a sense. I really want to be the first guy to accomplish all these great things for a program, to set it off for people to come behind me and then go further, and then that's kind of how a program builds to be a powerhouse. And that's my ultimate dream, is to see a school in my hometown, be a school where wrestling is at the top. So yeah, it's something that I've dealt with as far as this year went. I put in all the work and I sacrificed everything. I did everything perfect. So when it was time to go wrestle, I didn't feel like tight or anything like that. It was just, I did everything right. I felt like it was my destiny, and it was time to just go do it. So I went out, I let it fly, and good things happened. And being a leader within the program, I just constantly try to help these guys, because I know how I was as a freshman, sophomore, and you kind of, I hope to help these guys not do what I did. They tell you day one, they give you the plan, like, hey, you want to be a national champ or put yourself in the best position to do that, this is what you got to do. And then for some reason, everybody comes into college and is like, I think my way works better. And you kind of have to learn the hard way. And so I just try to help the guys out and just learn from some of my mistakes and help them be the best version that they could be.
Sometimes you got to touch the stove and realize it's hot, and then sometimes you take the advice.
Yeah. Exactly.
And don't get burned.
Uh-huh.
So I don't care who answers this, but so I did the rankings for 5 years for track wrestling. We were the first ones to rank to 25, first ones to rank to 33. And I think that was actually good for a program like a Northern Colorado that might have had a guy that was 22 and now they're in the rankings, and track was a very credible source at the time. So, but we know the formula, when you're doing the rankings. So we kind of knew, the All-Star meet doesn't count. That's why Aaron Brooks was a 3 seed. So I think that's the easiest one to point out. But 2, we figured with coaches' vote and strength of schedule and frankly a Big Ten bias, you were probably going to be the 2 and not the 1. Do you guys spend any time at all thinking about that, Coach? Do you use that as a motivating factor? Is it like the Michael Jordan thing? You find anything you can to make this guy have people not believe in him and put it, extra motivation? And do you I just need to know if I'm wearing red or green and who my first round guy is? Because I'm fascinated. Everybody has these different approaches on that. How do you guys approach that?
Well, I mean, for me, I always like making them aware, right, of what the possibilities are, right? And again, especially throughout the recruiting process, right? I can't stand it when you have that guy that is super talented, right? And he's like, I don't really follow the sport, right? I believe at this level, if you want to be great at it, you've got to be obsessed with it, right? You've got to be wanting to know everything. And Andrew's one of those guys. He could probably name off everybody that wrestled in the world championship last year, right? Literally everybody. And it's that type of demeanor that I think you need in order to have success, right? So we talked about those scenarios, hey, we may be the 1, but we're probably going to be the 2, or we could be the 2. And I knew as soon as it came out, right, it's adding that fuel to the fire, especially for Andrew. It was don't poke the bear, right? There you go. They did it, don't do it. And I think it certainly motivated him.
Yeah. So, Andrew, we play all these fantasy pools. We're trying to, okay, if it's in a seeding thing, then you're a better buy. If it's a ranking thing, then Real's a better buy, because you get them for cheaper and stuff. But when we looked at the beginning of the year, 141 looked like one of this weight classes, 10 guys could win it. There was just chaos. It wasn't when a Gable Stevenson is coming back or somebody like that, or even a Yanni who ended up losing a match, but people are kind of well, Yanni's probably going to win it. Shirachi's probably going to win it. These guys have, there wasn't a returning finalist in your weight. And so and Cole Matthews has a style that is good, but it isn't just flies off the page kind of thing. And so it looked like all these guys on a bad day could be beatable. And you and Woods kind of took charge of the weight. You guys, knocked everybody down, didn't duck anybody. that kind of thing. We were fascinated going into the finals because I've told people all year, I think the way to beat Woods is to pick neutral, get a takedown, try to get it 2-2, and then win in overtime, realistic. And there's obviously a bunch of ways. You found a path I don't think a lot of people would have thought of. I don't think that was the way Coach drew it up.
No.
You get bear hugged and go get a guy off on him. So when you get, I guess either one of you guys, like when you win the semi, right? Number one thing is make sure my weight's good, that kind of stuff. But even if you don't have the perfect weight cut, you have the longest recovery you're going to have of the whole year. Weird routine because kind of by yourself, maybe watching a movie, sleeping, eating, whatever. How much do you guys break down the path to victory versus a finalist?
The way I approached it is kind of the way I've approached every match this year, just go get them. Don't wait. Let it fly. Don't sit here and try to play the game too much. Just go get them. I'm confident. I was very confident because of all the work I put in all areas, rather that's shooting a single leg, coming out the back door, getting in a crazy scramble, them in on my legs. So I knew there was also very few paths to beat me. I figured, like when you break it down, in my mind, the way I'm going about it is like, hey, for someone that it's one thing to keep it close. To beat me, in my head, I was thinking this guy's going to take me down 3 times. So I was very confident in my skills and my ability. And, we went out there and it goes kind of perfect for him, 0-0 first period. And then he gets the turn, right? He's really good on top. We go bottom. I wasn't afraid or nothing of the position. I had been working a lot on bottom in the summer and throughout the whole course of the year. So I was confident going into that. He ended up getting the turn, and then I pop out, and then we get in that upper body position, and I let it go. And once I got the 6, I knew it was going to be pretty tough to beat me. So just going about the match the same way that I would, just confident and letting it fly, right? If I go out there and wrestle tight, I probably turn down on that bear hug, or I probably try to run out of bounds or something like that. I wouldn't step in and go let it go. But I think that was just a testament to my character, all the work I've been putting in, and the belief in my skills.
Well, it's certainly a testament to having, frankly, the cojones to just let it rip.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, you're in this scenario, like it's one of the things like us old guys, like the guy should just do his thing. Well, we all have been in those matches where we didn't do our thing, and we tend to forget that as we get older. So, Coach, I'll ask you, if you had it over again and it's 0-0 and it gets deferred to you, do you pick neutral now having seen the match?
No, I think we go down again, right? I mean, it was certainly something we thought about, but I mean, we knew that, we probably needed to get off bottom. And if we didn't, I was confident enough in Andrew's ability to ride, right? And, he proved that a little bit in the third period. He was able to ride Woods to get that riding time down below a minute where, it made the match a lot easier. So certainly didn't go according to plan, right? I mean, I think if you told me he was going to, win a national title and not score a takedown, I'd say that's a pretty tall task, right?
And get turned. Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things that you have to prepare for, right? And I mean, again, I've told these guys the story of my national finals, right? I mean, I think I wrestled like crap in my national final match. I won on a locked hands calling overtime, right? I wrestled tight, and I said, don't be that guy, right? Like, go and let it fly, right? And if you lose, you lose, but at least you go out on your terms, right? And he let it fly.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is absolutely true. Like coaching, whether it's little kids up to world championships, like if you lose doing your stuff, you can, when you go back and process it later, like if that throw had gone differently and you lose the match, like, well, at least I let it rip as opposed to bailing out and getting rode out and those sort of things. So I think that might have been the longest challenge I've ever seen in an NCAA final. Certainly took the cardio aspect out of the match. I'm guessing, Andrew, by the time you came back, you guys are both completely fresh and not sweaty or anything, right? Like it looked like you guys were actually talking to each other. Like, yeah. So, I mean, like The challenge was your challenge, whether it was a 3 count or a 4 count, essentially, right, Coach?
Yes.
So I've actually worked the table at the Big 12. And part of the problem is sometimes the person that runs the camera doesn't know where to put it back to the right time. But it seems to me like that thing should have taken about 45 seconds, right? Because the minute, okay, so you guys correct me if I'm wrong because you're in the arena, literally. But the minute that coach throws me to my back and I'm in the 45-degree criteria is when they should start counting when watching the video. It doesn't matter if the referee got over there in time. And if there's 4 seconds, there's 4 seconds. If there's 3.9 seconds, then there's 3.9. Yeah. Am I missing something?
So I'll actually explain it. So the reason the official review took that long was I actually talked to the guys in the booth after the match, and they told me, they're like, hey, we had that answer way before, right? So it sounded like there was actually a relay issue between the table and the review booth. So that was actually why it took so long. There was a lot going on in that situation, though. There was a lot. I mean, there was the, they had called when they went when they finally went out of bounds, they had called Andrew for stalling, which was a mistake. They actually called Woods for stalling, right? So that's why the score originally showed 3-2 Woods. So they had to fix that. And then since the call got overturned from 2 near fall to 4, they had to go back, fix riding time, put the regular time on the clock. So we knew it was going to take a little bit, but the longer it went, I mean, we were just confident that, hey, they're changing this in our favor, right? And unfortunately, it took longer than it had to, right? But again, I think with both of the guys, I don't think it gave anybody an advantage or a disadvantage, from a cardio perspective.
I mean, from the outside looking in, and I would say this if Real was on the pod, neither one of you looked tired. Okay. I think if anything, it helps the guy that got put on his back because you kind of get to collect yourself as opposed to walking right back to the middle and like, what the hell, I was up 2-0 and now I'm down 6-2. I mean, I would think, but again, if it was the other way around, I'd say the same thing to you. Like, whoever's the guy who kind of got shocked is the one that probably benefits from the recovery time, just mentally. But physically, I mean, you wrestled him, but he didn't look like he was getting tired to you, or tired to me, and it didn't look like you were getting tired. You're just two athletes in really good shape that handled the pressure well, right?
Yeah, it was. It took the cardio aspect out of it for sure because, I mean, we don't even get that long of break in practice. So it was definitely like going out there.
Take 9. There's no take 9 in practice, right, Coach?
Yeah.
So we're on USA Wrestling, and like I said, I've watched you wrestle. I was on the wrong side of coaching against you, and I think it came out you're going to take an Olympic red shirt next year. Is that correct?
Things are still up in the air, but yeah, we'll see about that. That's kind of what
it's a possibility.
I'm leaning towards. For the upcoming Olympic year.
So will you wrestle in the U.S. Open then this coming in April?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about what I'm doing here in the near future, but I am pretty sure on my next like big goal is to make that 2024 Olympic team and win an Olympic title.
Right. And so we talk about this every week on the pod. We're a USA Wrestling podcast, so we probably talk about the summer stuff more than anybody else. But the criteria is, so for example, like Yanni medaled at that weight, so he now sits in Final X for the 2023 World Team. Mm-hmm. They've eliminated a couple steps. Basically, now it's just the U.S. Open and then Final X, U.S. Open April 25 to 29-ish, somewhere in there. And then I think June 10 is Final X out east. So you basically, if you were going to make the World Team this year, you have to win the U.S. Open and then beat Yanni 2 out of 3. Mm-hmm. If it was a weight, let's say Yanni had medaled, and I'm more saying this, I know you guys know this, but if Yanni had medaled, then you have to make the finals, and then that finals becomes the Final X match.
Yeah.
So how do you guys map out what you're going to do? How is that decision-making process? Like, hey, we're going to try to make a U23 team. We're going to try to medal there. Like how much is too much? Obviously, more can be okay if you're planning on not wrestling a collegiate season. How do you guys work all that out?
I think it's really just trying to figure out what's best for Andrew. right? I mean, and like he mentioned, the goal is to win the Olympic gold in 2024, and I think he is more than capable of that. And it's just trying to find what is the best pathway to do so, right? And again, we're analyzing everything that goes into that, and there's a lot, right? It's not just do we wrestle, don't we? It's what is best for him, right? And so that's something that we'll continue to talk about and see what the best scenario is. But for me, I always want to do what's best for my athletes, right? And when we have that answer, I mean, we'll follow it, right through.
Yeah, well, I know, Coach, I see you every year out there in Vegas. Like last year, I had a brick suggestion during one of Vinny's matches. So, and for people that, this is self-serving because it's a USA Wrestling pod, but maybe you guys can attest to this. How good, if you're a fan, how good is that US Open to be there? Like the ability to sit closer to the wrestlers and see amazing matches.
I mean, it's the best wrestling in this country, right? I mean, you've got the best athletes there. And I think with the change in the format this year, I mean, it's exciting, right? I mean, you're going to have even more of the best guys there. And again, there's not a better opportunity to see good wrestling. I think more people need to go back to the Open. And I think the change in format's going to get us back to that point where you're going to start seeing a lot more people show up. And that's just exciting for wrestling. Yeah,
for sure. So, Andrew, 65 kilos, which is basically 143 pounds for people that don't do conversions at home. It's a weight that's been, until this year, America had not medaled in that weight. I think we lost him.
He's here. He just walked in the office.
All right.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I was like, man, I got cut off. Yeah, so 65 kilos was a weight that until recently, until Yanni, there had not been a medalist, for America, going back to Bill Zadek, some of the weight, sometimes it was 66, sometimes 68, all those changes, but more or less that range. And so, in that weight class was a weight we didn't qualify for the 2020 Olympics, Jordan went to Final X and came one match short. And as somebody who's commentated the world championships, the easiest way to qualify to get, your spot into the Olympics is to either medal at the Worlds or medal at the Pans, because that last chance tournament is a freaking meat grinder. I don't think people even understand that. So, I mean, this is a weight class full of great guys like yourself, Yanni, like the Nick Lees of the world. I don't know if a Zane comes down, but it's like, NCAA champ after NCAA champ. Do you spend, let's say you go to the US Open, say the seeds come out and you're whatever. Do you, let's say you're the 3 and you're going to wrestle the 6, you're the 6 going to wrestle the 3. Do you look at, okay, these are the guys I'm going to have to beat? Is it, you look at tendencies like lead leg, what these guys try to do on the edge of the mat, specifically like that? Or is it, I'm just working on me and these guys, I'm the bad draw. I don't need to worry about anybody else.
I follow wrestling really closely, and I have for a very long time. So I know these guys, and I kind of have an idea on what they do when they do it. But it's mostly just focused on me. Just continuing to develop in all positions. There might be a couple positions where a particular wrestler, he might be good somewhere, so I'll be working in that area just to be prepared for it. But my thought process is that it doesn't matter. You want to be a world champ, you better be able to beat everybody in your own country, especially. You want to be the best in the world. It doesn't matter who they throw out there. You better be able to go beat them. So that's just kind of my thought process. I map out myself a lot, what areas I can strengthen, what areas I need to touch up on or whatever, or just polish a little bit. So I just stay really focused on myself.
So I want to ask at least 2 more questions about the tournament itself. So the semifinals, it felt like the air got sucked out of that room about, 10 minutes after it started. Ramos is another guy like yourself who has a ton of age group world team experience, USA Wrestling. And also, he was a guy I interviewed after the quarters, and like I talked to my buddies, I go, this dude thinks he's going to win. Like he got a feel. I asked him, I go, how important was to get a feel? Because I guess that Spencer's just like freakishly strong on top, and until you feel somebody grab you like that, it's just a different thing. But the energy, I felt like the whole rest of the semis, it was high, but not like, Coach, you've been around that tournament a lot of years. I'll ask you, did it feel like the air kind of got sucked out of it? I'll start with that. And then did that affect any of you guys in the back? I know you're not necessarily best friends with anybody, but is it like, hey, it doesn't matter if I'm a favorite or not, I saw what just happened? Or is it you're just listening to your headphones and really don't care?
Yeah, I think, we're just focused on Andrew at that point, right? We're focused on, the guys that we have in the tournament. We're not really worried about anything else that's going on. And, it was the same way with the finals, right? The order of the finals comes out. And
that was going to be my next question. Yeah.
We're the second to last match, right? And it's like, what do you do, right? Selfishly as a fan, right? I haven't now watched the finals in 20 years, right? I love wrestling myself, but, we've got a job to do. So it's making sure that Andrew is prepared and ready to do whatever it takes for him to be successful. And, I still haven't gotten the opportunity to go back and watch the finals, but I'm sure at some point here I will.
You guys won. I don't want to ruin the end for you, but like in Titanic, the boat sinks and you won. So, like I interviewed Glory. I got really sick Friday, so I got like 2 or 3 interviews and literally like had pneumonia, but he was the one I got. And I asked him, I said, if you had your choice, would you go first or last? And he's like, first. But I feel like the guys at your level, the coaches, the athletes, are so good at following that philosophy of you can control what you can control, influence what you can influence. And then if you're religious, you pray about the rest. And if not, you just try to let it go kind of thing. So, when you get they go, okay, we're going to end on Yanni, which, made sense once Spencer lost, I think. Like, do you guys change like your sleep? Do you change any sort of like plan? Like, hey, we don't need to get there any earlier than necessary now because once we do the march, it's going to be another couple hours before we wrestle. Is that how you guys approached it?
Yeah, I think everything changed, right? Again, the Parade of Champions is a great thing. It's a great honor for these guys, but we had to be there at the start of the finals, right? Otherwise we would have been showing up probably halfway through. Right. But,
right. Yeah.
And usually, an hour before the tournament starts, the matches start. He's usually third up and, we're getting that pre-match in an hour before where we had to adjust everything. So, I think, when we start warming up 65, 74, yeah, right after 65, we started his warm up and his preparation, getting ready for the finals. Right. I think everything changes, but, you try to simulate the time sequence as much as you can.
Yeah, I think that's such a weird thing because you get to those tournaments like they give out to do the All-American. So like it, like at our state tournament, we're giving out 2, 3, when I was wrestling, there was 3 classes. So like the weight class before you ends, and then it's 1 through 6, 1 through 6, 1 through 6. Then they read everybody's name. So you have an eternity and you don't think you have an eternity. And sometimes that nervous energy, you won it 4 times. So by the time you're a senior, you're like, I have 26 minutes from right now, and I'm going to kill this guy. It's a little different, The first time you're down there, you're like, I would think it's a little stressful. So Andrew, I'll ask you this. How, I don't know if comforting, maybe calming, how calming is it to have a guy in your corner that did what you wanted to do, that has won a national title? How much is it like, if you have a question, you can ask him, even if it's just kind of, shooting the bull down there, like, somebody who's super calm, because I think like that, what is that like?
Yeah, it just kind of lets me know that I'm where I need to be. So anytime I have a question or anything, it gets solved there, right? Because Troy's kind of been there and done that multiple times, been in that atmosphere. So I just the whole time I just did my best to try to stay calm. That was probably the most nervous I've been, like probably ever. So I was just trying to sit there and just relax and not move or nothing because I didn't want to like waste energy pacing or doing something.
Yeah.
So I just tried to remain calm, and then it really wasn't until I started warming up where I was finally like, okay, let's go do this. I've done this a million times. Now it's time to go get it. But the worst part of that process was 25s through 65 just sitting there. Like I wasn't even watching the matches. I was just kind of because I was at an angle where I couldn't really see the TV, but I didn't really want to watch them right then. So yeah, I was just staying calm and trying not to burn too much energy, like just being nervous or stuff like that.
Well, for the people that are watching this and don't know what the NCAA tournament is like in the back,
yeah,
it's a weird experience. It's like catacombs back there. It looks like a homeless shelter. Like everybody, I mean, I don't think I'm lying, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of food, but like everybody's got these air mattresses and chairs, and everybody's got power strips for their, for phones and everything to be plugged. And there's curtains and labels, but it's like that only started happening like 6-7 years ago, I think, Coach, right? Like before it was kind of a free for all and people were trying to hoard corners and stuff like that. And now it's, am I right? Like this hasn't been going on. Yeah. And then, it's like anything else, imitation, sincerest form of flattery. Like, hey, I'm going to go do what Alirez is doing because it seems to be working. These guys all got air mattresses. We're going to go get an air mattress. But it's like its own little colony down there. The energy down there is so, you mentioned being nervous. And I think that's a really honest answer because it's probably, most of us grow up, when we wrestle, we want to be an NCAA champion and Olympic champion. I mean, that's it. And I understand being a world champion would be a bigger deal than being an NCAA champion in terms of actual credibility. Mm-hmm. Just like winning Fargo in some ways is easier than state if you don't handle pressure well, because everybody in your school, your girlfriend knows about state. Your girlfriend doesn't understand about Fargo. So to do it when the pressure is the highest, when like the people in Northern Colorado don't understand the U.S. Open.
Exactly.
I don't think like, well, maybe they kind of, not the way they understand what you guys just did a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So that just functioning like that, coming through, because there's just moments in your life you either get it done or you don't. And so I always tell people like you win or you explain. Like when I used to recruit kids, Coach, I'd be like, how'd you do in the tournament? They start talking. I know they didn't win. Yeah, you just say you won. I mean, right? Like if I say, Andrew, how'd you do at national? Like I won. Okay, now tell me about it. If you didn't win, man, I got lose. I got a bad draw. All this other stuff. Say it again.
I was like, what had happened was.
Yes. And I tell people, like I tell kids, like if you lose, just tell the guy you lost. They're gonna ask a follow-up question. I took second. I took third. What happened? You go from there. So I'll leave it with this. What you guys did was winning a national title, significant period. As a team, as an athlete, and Andrew, I listened to enough of your other stuff to understand you have the humility, along with the confidence to know at the end of the day you're the one that did it, but a bunch of people poured themselves into you, and that's a really good balance to walk. As somebody who's a lot older than you, it's something I respect tremendously about you. Like when you look at the next couple years, right? Because you guys jumped a level. You can't go back. Nobody, whatever they want to say bad about you, they can't say some of it now as an individual and as a program, right? Like, hey, we got it done. But it seems like a very optimistic future for you guys at UNC and for you, Andrew, personally. Are you guys that write down goals, and now that you've checked one box, are we on to bigger and better goals? And what is that process for you guys as both a program and individually?
For me, it's just you could ask me when I was 5-6 years old, and I would have told you my goals, and those have been the same goals I've had since all the way up to now. So now that I finally got NCAA champion out the way, now it's moving on to the next thing, and that's for me, that's being an Olympian, winning an Olympic title, and going on to international aspirations. So for me, it's just continuing to develop. I've always believed in my skills. I've always believed that I was born for this. You know, you call it fate, destiny, whatever. I've always felt like it's in the cards for me, and it's just going to be rather I take the tools around me and make the most out of them, or I don't. You know, and that's kind of the decision I made last year is to let's make the most out of this. You know, especially. You know, I go through my whole life wrestling, and now a couple years into college, I still haven't done what I wanted to do, and I finally just decided it's time to use what I got. So, taking that newfound kind of mentality into the rest of my career, and I believe that as long as I'm doing that, you know, great things are going to happen for me.
And Coach, you're cool hand Luke, but I mean, you are, but this had to be a very rewarding weekend for you, both your relationship with Andrew, but then also for the program, right? Like people, you know, the haters got to stop hating at least for a weekend, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, it validates a little bit what we're doing, right? I mean, shows, I guess, a little bit that we do know what we're talking about, which is always reassuring, right? But I knew we were going to get there at some point, and there's not a better person to be that first, right, than Andrew. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. And, you know, as you mentioned, I mean, this program has a very bright future. I mean, Andrew's got 1 year left, right? You know, fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to look at it, I mean, we had 2 freshmen in the blood round, right? I mean, they're getting overshadowed a little bit by Andrew winning the title, but you know, they're good. They're really good, right? And I know Steve-O, you know, coming off we're walking back from the finals, right? And he's walking with me, and you know, he just points at Boo in front of us. He says, "You don't need to tell me anymore. Like, you know, I get it, right? Like everything that we've been talking about the whole time, he understands, right?" And I think we've got a great group coming back, and you know, we've got a team meeting here in 10 minutes, right? And we're going to kind of talk about the rest of the summer and the spring, and you know how we're going to get there. So we're excited, and I think there's plenty more good ahead.
Yeah. It's very honest what you said, what he said. Like, I think at one point in our lives, all of us, I mean, I shouldn't drag you guys into this, but I think we all tried to take a shortcut, right? Like, see, those nods are like very honest nods. Like whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a friendship, whether it's in sports, like, you know, it's like those people, they talk about running sprints and they don't go all the way to the line, right? Like you don't put your cart back in the rack. It's like these little things and you think they don't matter, but it gives you an excuse to kind of just not go as hard when it really counts. And if Steve-O didn't do that 100% of the time and he saw somebody who did, and it's a bunch of little things, but it added up to the big thing that everybody wants, and he's a super talented kid. He's also, I think, an amazing story, and most kids that are good at that age are complete degenerates by the time they're 20, you know? So the fact that he's a good person and a good wrestler is a tribute to him. You know, that's amazing. And I am going to be selfish and give a shout out to Vinny. So you know, he's a guy that I have a relationship here, you know, us in St. Louis, Ryan King, Michael Pixley, a bunch of us, Cornell Robinson, who coached him, all those guys that, you know, got to work with him a little bit. And obviously he's, you know, jump levels with you. And, you know, I texted with him yesterday, told him you guys were going to be on the pod and just congratulated him. And I got a lot of love for Vinny when we were doing our charity event. He wore the uniform we gave him to the Virginia Beach finals. And it helps, you know, we raise money for some good causes and stuff like that. But, you know, when people are like, what's that 2-piece? And, you know, he's out there telling people, it helps. So make sure you give Vinny a hug for me when you see him in 10 minutes. Okay.
Will do.
So Coach, I'll definitely see you in a month. Andrew, maybe we'll see your TBD.
Yep.
Come out and smoke, maybe not. So want to wish you guys the best of luck. I want to thank you guys for coming on. I know you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions. And so I just appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I'm David Mirikitani. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll talk to you next week.